Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Wednesday dive in, or whatever we want to call it. Welcome to anyone who is watching on Twitter. I think I may be streaming there. I'm not 100% sure, but I'll find out. Trust me, I'll find out. Right, I'm a bit tired tonight, but I shall persevere. We're going to dig into the case around Lucy Connolly, who, as you all know, was arrested and charged with a crime regarding something that she put on social media during the night of the disturbances. So we'll see how that goes. We'll dig into that in a second. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you to the chat room for attending, as always. Dreadeye, Amy, Julie Cellini from foreign parts, I believe. Living the high life. Who else have we got? Militant Mushroom, O'Dowd, yep. Good. Any lurkers out there? Good to see you too. Or it will be when you come into the fold. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk about Lucy. So I don't really know Lucy. I don't have any skin in the game as far as she's concerned. I followed her on Twitter and I listened to what she had to say. I didn't find her particularly contentious. She has her viewpoint, as everyone is entitled to have. Her husband is a Tory councillor. And I tell you what we will do. We'll address something that came up on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, that came up a few days ago. And it seems to be that some people seem to think that that family is somehow associated with being some kind of actors for the government, whoever's in power, because her husband, who is a Tory councillor, and I think Northamptonshire or something like that, this is all public knowledge, so I'm not doxing anyone here. So her husband was apparently one of the first COVID patients in a hospital in Northamptonshire. So, coincidence? People were affected. People did go to hospital. That happens every year. People get really bad flus, pneumonias, and other respiratory diseases. So it's not something to be terribly surprised that someone could be picked up for it. But to then say that this is maybe a kind of, what would you call it? Well, it's a conspiracy that she's now in the frame for this and it's all interconnected. I don't know. It's a bit of a stretch for me. And, I mean, you've seen us on Thursday nights with Ed. I'm quite happy to go down rabbit holes, but this one just seems a bit difficult. Now, her husband did allude to the fact that she had lost a child when making a statement about what's going on. And I'll be honest, I didn't particularly like his statements. They seemed very detached and cold. But I'm not really going to go into that. What I'm going to try and do is concentrate on the law as I see it. And to give you some background, I have over 20 years worth of experience of implementing and interpreting the law practically. And when I say the law, I mean the Scottish criminal law and road traffic law of Great Britain. So while I do not have any expertise in English law, and this is not legal advice, this is not to be taken as legal advice, this is merely my interpretation of it. I have won awards for my study of law at the Scottish Police College. Therefore, I'm more than happy to give you my opinion on this, and that's all it will be. I'm not practicing law in any form at the moment, but I do have a good practical knowledge of it and how it's applied, and more importantly, how to interpret it. Because when you see words in legalese, they don't necessarily mean what they mean in the Oxford English Dictionary, for example. So let's dig in. Let's go. So during the incidents of the evening where the young girls were stabbed to death in Southport, a number of people took to social media to express their frustration and rage. And it happened all over the country. And a number of people took to the streets to express their frustration and rage over the next 2 or 3 days. And there was one tweet in particular that inflamed a lot of people, claiming that the person who had been responsible had a certain name and was of a certain demographic that that everybody's up in arms about. It implied he was an illegal immigrant, and that wasn't true. And I actually made a video about that because within minutes of that coming to my attention, I had been online, done some digging, realised this channel3.com, whatever it was, or channel3.news wasn't really an authoritative news channel. It was basically a one-man show, just like I am, right? Just like I am, but this guy was, I think, making things up just for clicks and giggles. And unfortunately, it turned out to be not so funny because he got arrested as well, and I understand he was based in Pakistan. But after researching it quickly, and I mean, I hadn't tracked him to Pakistan, but the actual .com name was registered in Massachusetts, in Burlington. And it was obviously not a business. It was protected by the Who Is thing, so you didn't know his actual address. But it wasn't something that it was held by a hosting company in effect. So it's not something that a proper news channel is going to be doing. And I said this there and then on X/Twitter, and I actually made a video about it and put it up on YouTube because I thought this was quite important. Because a lot of people were taking this tweet and reposting it and telling people, and I reposted it, but I put on it that this did not seem to be a legitimate post, and I wouldn't put any store in what was being said in it. And you know what? At that point, I think the government and the mainstream media had a duty to address that, because I think that tweet was very inflammatory, and I think it caused a lot of the issues that then happened over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 days, whatever. And I think they should have addressed that there and then, but they didn't. Now, there is no reason for reporting restrictions on a case to be held if you've gone to see a judge, or called a quick hearing if you've got the guy. So the other thing is, they didn't address the tweet at all. They didn't address it at all. So I think they're culpable here, and certainly incompetent in not addressing that tweet, because that tweet was critical and inflammatory, and we should have known, and we should all know to check our sources before we start, going on about things and sharing them. But sometimes we don't. Sometimes in the heat of the moment, anger overtakes you and you put things out and you say things you don't mean. And this becomes quite crucial, I think, in the application of the law. And I think the law here has been corrupted almost in the way that it's been applied. And in particular by the stance taken by the Prime Minister and the Home Office. And Starmer went on TV and said the full force of the law would be on these thugs and criminals. Now, you can't call people thugs and criminals if you haven't given them the opportunity to either plead guilty or be found guilty in a court of law, because they're not criminals. Because in this country, everyone is presumed innocent until proven guilty, except for certain statutes under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. But we'll not go into those. So, Lucy put out a tweet. It was an ill-advised tweet. In fact, it was quite a horrible tweet, really. Some would even say vile. I wouldn't necessarily disagree. But we've all put out tweets that maybe are. I certainly have. I have very little regard for certain people, and I'm more than happy to call them and to tell them what I think, because as far as I'm concerned, free speech is still a real thing. But she was visited by the police and arrested. And then I believe she was released on bail while investigations were still ongoing, and then she was charged. And when she was charged, she was taken to court for a pleading diet very quickly. I think she was taken to court for a pleading diet and remanded in custody. Now, at that point, she hadn't pled guilty. And I understand that she was charged with intent to cause racial hatred. And that's quite crucial, because that word intent doesn't mean that she necessarily intended to cause racial hatred. What we have to look at is the test that would be applied to that statement and the legalese around the word intent. But before we even get there, she was remanded in custody. Now, in my view, the law has overstepped itself already, because there are certain reasons for refusing bail. And I don't quite understand why she wasn't allowed bail, because she'd already taken the tweet down of her own violation. So she had removed it within a couple of hours of it being tweeted. Probably not due to anyone saying anything against it, but because she probably thought better of it. And in the moment, where she had, temporarily been very angry about the situation and posted this out with regard to this other tweet, she'd obviously considered it and thought, right, okay, maybe I was a bit OTT. Fair point. Doesn't excuse the fact that she tweeted it in the first place, but it is certainly, I would say, something in mitigation. But apart from that, she was remanded in custody, as we'd said. Now, if you're remanded in custody, I think there's three main criteria in England, and one of them is you're likely to reoffend. I think that's quite obviously not going to happen after the circumstances in which this occurred. So I would say that she was very unlikely to reoffend. So no real reason to hold her in custody on that. She was likely to abscond. Again, I think unlikely. She has a child. She has a husband who's a political appointee or political elected member of a council. She has a life in this country, so unlikely to abscond. And the third one would be that the crime was of such severity that she's a danger to the public or herself. And I really don't think that applies. So why was she remanded in custody? She was remanded in custody as a lesson to other people who were posting similar things that maybe just didn't quite meet the mark when it came to, the full force of the law coming down upon you. And she was put there, I would say, to make you scared, to inject a level of fear into people that were using social media. And the government were using that as a control mechanism. And you may think I'm being over dramatic here, but what other possible reason could she be in custody for here? Why would she be remanded in custody? For a tweet on social media? So think about that. I think the law and the government massively overreached at this point. Massively overreached. They have breached your rights as individuals and citizens of this country. And they have effectively committed a crime themselves by putting you into a state of fear and alarm. In Scotland, that would be called a breach of the peace. And I think they should be pulled up for that. But no one will. Excuse me. So now we come to the point, and this is why I'm talking about it, because she has indeed pled guilty now. So she's been on remand for what? That must be 3 weeks or something? So now she has pled guilty because she was back at court and was remanded again. So she must have been there for either a pleading diet or the set trial date or whatever. But she's now changed her plea to guilty. And although she hasn't yet been sentenced, because the magistrate has sent it to Birmingham, I believe, in order to ensure that there is no local interference in the sentencing. I hate to say it, but given the nature of the tweet and the nature of the people that it was talking about, I think sending it to Birmingham is a completely wrong move, because I think that even introduces some inherent possible bias in the legal system, because you're in a very, very different situation there than the situation in which she lives. So if it had gone anywhere, it should have gone to somewhere that replicates the area in which she lives, not a major city that has a completely different demographic from where she's living. Fairness is the test here, surely. And the law should be fair at all points in its application, even in sentencing. And again, I think these sentences have been prejudged, because with your Prime Minister being on television and social media and telling you will feel the full force of the law, it will be brought down upon you like a ton of bricks. You have to think, that's not how the law is meant to be applied. And then you get the Home Office calling people criminals, showing videos of people being arrested, gloating. We've arrested this guy as he came off a plane. This is number 70 that we've arrested. This isn't the actions of a healthy society. I don't remember people being treated like this during the BLM riots, because that's for that is what they were. They were riots. They weren't protests. And I don't remember anyone being treated like that. So, next. She's pled guilty and she's awaiting sentencing. Now, she was charged with, and here's the other one, the one that gets me. Her tweet didn't break X's rules. So what? So what? And people are going, well, this shows you the kind of platform that Elon Musk is hosting. It shows you nothing, because what she said has not been tested in court. She was charged with a crime that has never been tested in this instance. Therefore, she's pled guilty to something that we don't know if it is actually a crime or not. It will now be treated as a crime. It will be treated as if she's committed a crime. She accepts that she's committed a crime, and the legal profession will then go down the route and sentence her and punish her, because rehabilitation just doesn't occur, does it? This is just punishment. There's no rehabilitation here, because if rehabilitation was to be the aim, then she wouldn't be going to jail. But this is not about rehabilitation. This is about punishment. And again, it's about putting fear into people, so as they behave themselves, so as they stay in their box and they don't push the boundaries when they're talking to people on social media, when they're being annoying, when they're calling the government out for things it should and shouldn't do. Stay in your box, little man. So this crime that she has not been tested for, but she has pled guilty to, was intent to cause racial hatred. So we have to understand that the meaning of words in the legal profession. So intent means, in the legalese, where the individual has a clear aim or purpose to bring about a particular consequence. If a person acts with the purpose of causing a result, they have direct intent. Does anyone really believe that she intended for people to go and do what she said in her tweet? And I can't put her tweet out there, can I? Because then I would be republishing it. And I might get pulled up. But I tell you what, I wouldn't be pleading guilty. Not to this. So do we believe, as a group of her peers, do we believe that she had a clear aim or purpose to bring about a particular consequence? Do we really believe she wanted people to go out and do the thing that she was talking about? Because people say a lot of things on social media, and not really many of them mean what they say. And the next test is, would a reasonable person act on what she said? Would a person who is going about their business and reading that tweet act on it? Would they go, yeah, she's right? Would they get up, get dressed, get out there and do what she has suggested? And I would say very much a reasonable person would not do that, because it could be seen quite obviously that this was a reaction, a gut reaction, if you will, a visceral reaction to something that was ongoing that had truly deeply upset someone. But a reasonable, rational person would look at that and go, no, you've gone a bit far, doll. But, I'm not going to do that. So that's one test. The second one is, and an example of the person has a clear aim or purpose. If you point a gun at someone and pull the trigger, it can be reasonably inferred that you intended to cause them harm, regardless of what happens. You went out with the intention to cause them harm at that point. Now, there's another one called oblique intent, and this is English law. So I'm learning it with you at this point. Called foresight of consequences. So oblique intent can be found where the consequence was not the actor's purpose, but they foresaw that the consequence was virtually certain to occur as a result of their actions, even if they did not desire it. Now, if we apply that to her statement, this would be like someone standing on top of the Empire State Building and throwing a ham sandwich off it, because as you know, and whether it's an urban myth or not, a ham sandwich, when it reaches the ground, will have the power to crack a paving stone or your head. And if you threw a ham sandwich off the top of the Empire State Building, whether you intended to injure someone or not, there is a good chance that you could. Therefore, a reasonable person would foresee that may well be a consequence of those actions. And therefore that would be complete. But would a reasonable person look at the statement that was made by Lucy and go, oh, well, I can see people going out and doing that. Would a reasonable person think that? I think we go back to would a reasonable person act on it? And I think the answer is no. So then the question becomes, if I can see this and I'm not a lawyer, why are people who are obviously lawyers, defendants, defense lawyers, why are they advising their clients to plead guilty? Is this in order to get a reduced sentence? But even the people that, and Lucy hasn't been sentenced yet, Amy, so we don't know the time. But so why are they advising their clients to plead guilty? Because even those that have been sentenced with a quick guilty plea have had incredibly, I would say, draconian sentences imposed on them. 2 years for a tweet. 3 years, 5 years for throwing a brick. These are really, really draconian sentences. And like I said, I think the law has to be fair in application. It has to be fair in interpretation, and it has to be fair in application. And this is not a fair application if you only go back a few years and look at what happened when George Floyd died and the results that occurred after that. So why is the law not being fair? It's been corrupted. That's the only conclusion that I can draw. The judiciary has been influenced to an extent that they've been told and instructed to apply the maximum to these crimes. If they are indeed crimes, because I don't think we've had a trial yet. Everyone that's been sentenced has obviously pled guilty. So will this turn out like the miners' strike? Where 20 years down the line, people turn around and go, oh, those crimes have been expunged. You actually didn't do anything wrong. Will that happen? Which is of it's of no comfort to you now when you're languishing in a jail cell, when you've been unjustly imprisoned, when you are in effect an example set by a draconian and tyrannical government that has, in my view, stepped well over the line and is not acting fairly, is not acting justly, and needs to be called out for it at every opportunity. This is not how we expect to be treated. And yes, if one misbehaves to the extent where you become an issue in a civil society, you would expect to be punished. But not like this. And just think back to Starmer's words. The first words he said were along the lines, and I'm summarising, but along the lines of, the full force of the law will be brought to bear on these far-right thugs that are doing this. Not something like, as your Prime Minister, I'm calling upon you to take a step back and allow us to examine and determine the full facts of the situation. We have the person in custody, or we're just about to arrest them. We'll keep you informed, and we must work together to ensure that something like this never happens again. No, he just went straight in for the jugular. The full force of the law will be upon you. It was like some kind of biblical, you will be smitten. I will smite you. and you shall languish the rest of your days in a 4x4 cell. Is this England? Or is it North Korea? Because I'm struggling to see the differences at this point. And you may think I'm being hyperbolic, but this is not the England that I know. This is not how one expects to treat its citizens. I'm trying to keep this calm, but I'd probably not. But I have very strong feelings on this. And I don't think this is justice by any stretch of the imaginations, not just for Lucy, but for anyone, because I think these people have been coerced. I think they've been coerced, and in effect, they have been persuaded by being kept in remand to plead guilty. Well, look, you've been in remand now for 6 weeks. Your trial won't be until 2026, and you'll be in remand until then. So you might as well plead guilty and you'll be out in, a year. You'll get a year off for good behaviour. We'll give you 2 years to get a year off for good behaviour. That's how it works. So they go, oh, well, okay, I'll plead guilty because I'll get out sooner. Yeah. Well, there we go. There we go. If you've got any feedback for me, then more than happy to take it, either now in the chat room or send me a comment. Like, share, subscribe, and you know what, people? Don't kowtow to your government. Because remember, your government is supposed to work for you, not the other way round. It's been great for you.
You can see the writing on the pavement. Young kids, they're growing up in basements. Online, a whole new generation. I'ma make mine, so you better go take it. Always, they need a new replacement. Decentralized, can't contain it. We're changing lives, yeah, upgrading. Call it suicide of the older generation. Too late to try to go contain it. A generation fueled by creation. We live lives on a small screen nation. We control the airwaves, no negotiation. I refuse to think we need saving. Something good will come from creation. And when we think that the world is too anxious, we'll adapt, evolve, survive, and save it.
What keeps you up at night, yeah? Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. What keeps you up at night, yeah? Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah.